This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So it's day 2 of the draft. We know how the board went down because of day 1. And I'm going to look at this board before day 2 starts. And by the way, if you want to watch day 2 of the draft with me, get some live analysis and talk Browns while we wait on the Browns to make their selections, make sure you stay locked in here. Make sure you subscribe, notified, because I will be live during day 2 of the draft. So lock in with me. Y'all know what that's going to be like. But there are players available, obviously, after day 1. And with those players available, I'm going to kind of put them in different packets for where the Cleveland Browns are going to want to target some of these guys, or where I think they might want to target some of these guys in specific spots, who they're willing to trade up for, who they're willing to trade up from 54 for, who they're willing to trade up from 85 for. So let's get into it, man. There's one player on the board that I think the Browns would be willing to move up to 10 spots to get, right? If this player gets within 44, within that 10 spot range, I think the Browns would be willing to pay the price of maybe giving up a 6 and their, they don't have a 5th. No, they don't have a 4th this year. So a 6 and a 5th this year to move up 10 spots. As Johnny Newton, it'd be well worth it. Johnny Newton is as close to DJ Reader as you can get in this draft class, but he's young. So he's a young DJ Reader. Would be a fantastic move if you put him on a defensive line with everything else that the Cleveland Browns have. Look, he might not instantly be DJ Reader, but in a couple of years, that Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, you're going to have a hell of a defensive interior for sure. In a hell of a defensive line. He would absolutely be worth moving up 10 spots for. I don't think the Browns have any ammunition to move up more than 10 spots, and be able to accomplish what they want to do in this draft. But if there's one guy I'd be willing to move up 10 spots for, it's that guy, Johnny Newton. So he's the packet, the first packet, the 10 spot packet, right? That's the guy you move up 10 spots for. These next 3 players are, hey, if they're within a 5 pick range, so you're talking about maybe giving up 206 and maybe a 6th round pick next year to move up, then you move up for these guys, right? I think A.D. Mitchell is in that packet, wide receiver out of Texas, very strong wide receiver there. Ladd McConkey is in that packet. He's a chain mover. The Browns have a chain mover in Amari Cooper, but in the event that you cannot extend Amari Cooper, you want to have the insurance of knowing that you have somebody who's going to be a bona fide route runner and a bona fide chain mover. And that's what Ladd McConkey is going to be for you. And then Cooper DeJean, just because of the value. Look, the Browns always value corner. I'm pretty sure that Cooper DeJean is one of their 20 best players on the board. Same thing as Johnny Newton. They don't need a corner more than they need a defensive tackle. So they wouldn't be too eager to do this. But if Cooper DeJean is sitting there within 5 spots, I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns traded up. So that's the second packet in the second round. The third packet in the second round are the players that they are willing to take at 54 without entertaining a trade back. I think this is a pretty deep list. I think they're going to sit at 54 and pick. If they do trade back, it's because multiple of these players are on the board still, and they know they can get back to 56 or 60 and still get their guy, right, or 59. So Keon Coleman, wide receiver out of Florida State. We talked about him a ton. Big body guy. Does not separate that well on tape, but does have a great broad jump, good explosive numbers, not a long speed guy. Kind of reminds me a little bit of how DeAndre Hopkins was viewed coming out of college, where he wasn't explosive, not the great separator, but he still can find a way to muscle himself open. Big red zone target. The Browns don't have a ton of that outside of David Njoku. You're really just leaning on Deshaun Watson to run it, or maybe Donta Foreman to run, right? So you don't have a ton of options in the red zone. It's been something that's kind of held this offense back the last couple of years. So it would be something I'd like to be improved. And I think Keon Coleman is the type of player that can improve that for you. And I think he'll transition well into the pros. Kingsley Sumatia, He's not my favorite tackle that would be in this range, but I do think the Browns like his upside. He's a young player. He should not play right away. But if you let him sit on the bench for a year or two, there's a chance that he'll come out of that a pretty good player, right? This is somebody you don't really want to start until he turns 23, 24. I believe he's like 21 right now. So you have a couple of years to kind of build him up. I think that there's the skills there, the length's there. He's a little sloppy with his hands, but you have offensive line coaches to help him with that. So you shouldn't be afraid of the coaching there. High ceiling prospect, right? He's definitely somebody who could play up to a high level. I wouldn't be surprised if Kingsley either ended up one of the worst tackles in this draft. Well, not one of the worst. I wouldn't be surprised if Kingsley ended up being a career backup. I also wouldn't be surprised if Kingsley ended up being a fringe Pro Bowl starting level tackle in the NFL. So that's kind of the range that you're looking for there. Roger Rosengarten is somebody I like a lot. He does need to get a little stronger, right? So that's why he's not an immediate day one, year one starter. But I do think all of the tools and the skill set is there for him. I think he has really nice feet. I think he has really good hand placement. Like, he plays the tackle position really well. There were questions about, can he play on an island at the University of Washington when they had all those great offensive linemen, right? He was just kind of a part of a great thing at the University of Washington. He goes to the Pro Bowl and he dominates. He has good reps against Loki Latu. He has good reps against Chop Robinson. He has good reps against these edge rushers that are going in the first round. He has good reps against interior guys like Darius Phillips, who went in the first round. Like, he looked good against first round talent. There's some concern about his lack of length. I don't really care, because his technique seems to be able to make up for that. I don't really care about how these players measure up on paper as much as I care about what they look like when they go up against elite talent. If somebody does not have long arms, but it doesn't really affect them against elite talent, then that's going to be something to where I'm going to just be more willing to disregard it, because obviously they figure something out there. Christian Haynes, probably the best guard in this draft, like pure guard. The other two guys ahead of him in the interior offensive line are centers. So he is going to be somebody I like a lot in that kind of 54 range. It'd be interesting to see if they go guard here. I think a lot of people would be a little confused by that, but the Browns would be wanting to get a guard in this draft just because the future with Joe Bitonio is uncertain. He's in his 10th year of the NFL. He's been beat up a bit. He's had back issues the last couple of years. I think the end is closer than we want to admit to Joe Bitonio's running Cleveland. And I think you would want somebody who could step in and play that position. And right now, the Browns don't really have anybody. Wyatt Teller, you might want some flexibility with his contract, right? He hasn't really lived up to it. He's been fine, but he hasn't been that same level of player that he was in 2020 that you're kind of paying him to be. So maybe if you want to move off of that next year, have some flexibility, you want to get a guard. I think there's plenty of reasons for the Browns to get a guard in this year's draft. Christian Haynes, probably going to be there at 54 and would be enticing for them to pick. Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker out of Texas A&M. He's a playmaker. He's a gamer. He'd be somebody that'd be interesting to put next to JOK. I talked about it in the past. Maybe the plan to kind of fight back to how teams cover Myles Garrett is just to put fill the linebacker position with heat-seeking missiles, and I think Edgerrin Cooper can be one of those guys. And then Jalen Polk is somebody who could be a deep threat wide receiver. The Browns still don't have a true deep threat right now, right? They didn't bring back Marquise Goodwin, who is a questionable deep threat. But Jalen Polk would be a true deep threat, somebody who excelled at that at the University of Washington, and somebody that the Browns would definitely be interested in taking at 54. So those are my guys at 54. Let's talk about the third round a little bit here. There are a packet of players in the third round that I think the Browns would be willing to move up from 85 to get. The first of those players, Junior Colson, linebacker out of Michigan, similar to Edgerrin Cooper, more of a gamer. He's a good pass coverage guy as well. Just a guy that you could send in some packages, have some flexibility. I do think that losing Sione Takitaki is a little bit of a bigger deal than we all kind of made it out to be. I know Sione Takitaki was never really a true starter on this team, especially as they moved to more nickel sets, but I do think what he provided to this team was very useful. Now, Jordan Hicks is not going to be asked to replace that role. Jordan Hicks is going to be asked to replace what Anthony Walker was doing. So you do need somebody to fill that role. I don't think Devin Bush is the guy you can rely on to be Sione Takitaki. I think Devin Bush is significantly worse than Sione Takitaki. So I do want to get a linebacker that could fill that role for you this season, because again, I think we're sleeping on how much we're going to miss Sione Takitaki. Not saying that's going to ruin the defense or anything like that, but he was a really good hand to have back there. Especially you factor in his ability to be able to play Mike linebacker too in some pinches, which came in handy during the season. But yeah, Junior Colson, Edgerrin Cooper are the two linebackers I like there. Junior Colson, somebody I would trade up in the third round to get. Karan Amagaji, I don't like him at 54. I do like him around 80, right? I have too many questions about the level of play. And I'm not usually a level of play concern guy, but it's one thing when somebody plays in the FCS, but they're in a power FCS conference like the Big Sky, the Colonial Athletic. Well, it's the Coastal Athletic now, not the Colonial. The Coastal Athletic in the Missouri Valley Conference. Those are basically group of 5 conferences for those of you not familiar with the FCS. And I can make the argument that the Missouri Valley Conference is pretty much like playing at the bottom end of the ACC, right? Like, it's not that different. Like, North Dakota State, South Dakota State would beat the doors off of Duke or Wake Forest. So those kind of teams, I don't usually have the level of play concerns that other people have, because I don't think the FCS at the top of it is that much different than most of college football. I do think the Ivy League is very different, right? The Ivy League, those are football players there to get an education. And there's no disrespect to anybody who plays at that level. Playing Division I scholarship football is tough. It is, you got to be really good at football to get a scholarship to play Division I level football. But if we're talking about projecting to the NFL, there's just a difference. Maybe I would feel much differently about Karan Amagaji if he were able to play in the Senior Bowl. I think he is somebody who desperately needed to get to the Senior Bowl so I can erase some of these concerns, because if he went to Mobile and then he looked like Roger Rosengarten in Mobile, then all of my concerns about what his tape looks like and how athletic he looks like at Yale won't matter, because I got to see it against other elite competition, right? Like we talked about it. The Senior Bowl has multiple first-round picks every year. So if you can compete at that level, I feel good about projecting you to compete at the next level in the NFL. But since he doesn't have any Senior Bowl or even any All-Star tape, it's tough to project him into the second round. But in the third round, I'll take him. Blake Fisher, I'm gonna be honest, I would take Blake Fisher over Karan Amagaji, but Blake Fisher is also somebody that I like a lot. Athletic guy. He's gonna be a swing tackle for you, right? Like, I don't know if he truly starts at left or right. He could. He's athletic enough to start at left. He's athletic enough to have the upside to become a starter in the NFL. But I think his true fit is as a swing guy or a right tackle, or a utility guy in the NFL, and I like him there. Whereas Karan would be a left tackle project that you would hope would pan out, but again, I have too many questions about the projection there. Not enough questions to not take him and trade up in the third round to get him, but enough questions to where I would be a little bit more hesitant to do so with him. Ruke Orhorhoro from Clemson, defensive tackle. I think he's a great run defender. I think the Browns need run defenders in the interior of this defensive line. I would be willing to move up slightly to get Ruke Orhorhoro if that is the case, and especially to avoid him going to Cincinnati or something like that. All right, let's go with guys I would pick straight up in the third round, where the Browns pick at 85. Michael Hall, great explosiveness, very inconsistent tape. We got to be honest about that. He didn't show up as often as like a Dwayne Carter does, but he has more tools than a Dwayne Carter, right? Dwayne Carter does not have the burst, the explosive ability, the athletic ability that Michael Hall does, even though Dwayne Carter does have that BGO. He does have ball get up. Now, I would be willing to move up into like a compensatory third from 156, which would be steep, right? Which would be a steep price to get Dwayne Carter. I think that's about where he's going to end. If he's at 156, I would run to the podium and take Dwayne Carter too. But Michael Hall is probably the more upside pick. And if we're picking in at 85, you want the guy with the upside. Cooper Beebe, I like him a lot. Guard prospect out of Kansas State. Think he could start eventually in the league. Same thing with Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State, who unfortunately I saw absolutely manhandle my alma mater, unfortunately. Just destroyed them. But that aside, he's had a really good pre-draft process, and I think his take kind of stands out too. And again, it's different projection for somebody who played in a power FCS conference versus a non-playoff qualifying FCS conference, which is the Ivy League. The Ivy League does not qualify for the playoffs. The Ivy League does not get an automatic qualifier at AQ for the playoffs, and like almost every division in the FCS does. So it's just not the same level of competition as South Dakota State has been facing. South Dakota State and Missouri Valley, you're going to face draft picks in your conference schedule. There are going to be guys who get drafted on almost every team that you play against, or at least guys who are up there in their level of play, right? That's just simply not true for the Ivy League. So that's why I would be more comfortable with Mason McCormick, despite the fact that he's making a similar transition. But that's my thought. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.